I recently signed up for a retreat and I decided I needed some new clothes. I'm very frugal, you guys, and if you've been watching me for a while, you'll definitely know that. I don't like spending a lot of money on myself, so what did I decide to do? Head to my local Goodwill. Actually, I hit up a couple of them and I found some great items, but while I was there shopping for me, I could not go to the home goods decor section. Oh no, I ended up over there as well. I found some really great items that we are going to flip in today's video. And guess what? I found a bunch of new clothes for the retreat and for some of these other upcoming events that I have going on. So stick around and let's get flippin'. For project one, I found this basket, and you guys, I love picnic baskets. I'm always grabbing them. I love stacking them in my booths. I like painting some of them. This one had this thing on the front, and I actually had thrifted a while ago this other basket, and I was very easily able to get that off without damaging the basket. I couldn't remember how I did it. And after I ripped this off the front, I remembered that the rivets actually turned the opposite way. So I did very little damage to the basket. To be honest, it would have had the holes even with if I would have been able to take the rivets out perfectly. There was one little piece that I had to glue back on. I used a little tight bond, was able to get that right back on, held it in place. And then for the top, I knew that I wanted to refinish it. It was actually in really good condition, and I probably could have sold it as is, but I was actually considering keeping this one for myself for my bedroom remodel. So if you remember, Royce just released this new paper, and we're going to put that on top. And if you've never used Roycycled Decoupage Paper, I do recommend always starting with a white base so that your paper really pops. You don't have to, but it is what I recommend. So I'm using White Swan from DIY Paint, and I'm applying one even coat of White Swan. We're going to let it dry, and then we're going to come back and apply the decoupage paper. Paper all lined up, and I grab liquid patina, which is my go-to decoupage medium, my misting bottle, and if you've been watching me for a while, I always like using a starter strip. So after I get that paper all lined up, I just pull back the top and I apply an even coat of liquid patina, and then I mist my paper and then I lay it down. And what this does is it smooths out all the wrinkles, or it helps really alleviate all your wrinkles. Plus, it gives you better control over your paper. So if you were to just lay down a bunch of liquid patina and then lay down your paper, you would be lifting it up and rearranging, and this really holds it in place. And then from there, I work my way down. Now look at this color change. I must have had some bleed through. It was bright white before, but I'm embracing this. I actually love it. I love how it almost like gives it a more aged look, and that's really what this picnic basket is, very old and aged. So what I did is I first took that piece of sandpaper, got rid of the excess paper, and then I'm going in and I am going to apply a really nice, even thicker coat of Big Top, which is a sealer, because I do want to apply a paint inlay over the top of this, and we're going to use Big Top to apply the paint inlay. Oh my gosh, this is called Spring Melody from IOD, and you guys, I love it. It's just so beautiful. So initially what I did is I cut a bunch of florals out, these roses, and I laid them all down. I was going to go all in and apply every single one of them, And then I realized I had never done this before, applied a paint inlay to a decoupage piece of paper. So I thought, rather than ruining the entire piece, let's just apply one, see if it will work, and then we'll apply the rest. If you've never used a paint inlay before, you guys, it is so stinking easy. There's two ways to use them. You can either use a chalk style paint or a top coat such as Big Top like I'm doing. So what I did here is I laid down a nice even coat of Big Top. I misted my paint inlay to activate the paint and I laid it in the actual Big Top. I then took my heat gun and I dried it, and you want to do this pretty quick. You don't want to leave it overnight or anything like that. And then I misted it again. I damped off any excess water and I started pulling. And because I had actually sealed it with Big Top the first time and then applied a second coat of Big Top to apply the paint inlay in, it worked perfectly. And I'm glad I waited and did a test area, because initially I was just going to apply a bunch of the roses all over, but then I thought I like them kitty corner like this. And I think this turned out absolutely gorgeous. I love the roses on top of all of this typography. And then the last thing you need to do is just seal it again. So I'm using Big Top, and the key here is when you're sealing a paint inlay, load up your paintbrush and with a very light hand, rub the Big Top all over. For project 2, I found this wood container, and anytime I'm out thrifting and I find little containers like this, I love it because they're so versatile and you can use them for so many different things. This one had a really nice like gray tone to it, very worn, and I decided to use petticoat pink. Now, this is from my Maker's Box, this little container, and if you don't know, I do have a Maker's Box for all you DIYers. It's a subscription box and it is filled with so many goodies, so I will have the information linked below. But what I'm doing is using the petticoat pink, which is a DIY paint, and I am almost like dry brushing it on. And if you haven't used DIY paint before, it is a clay-based paint and it does need to be sealed so you can activate it with water. It's great for blending, wet distressing. So on all 4 sides, I'm just like dry brushing this all over the container. I don't want to hide all of that beautiful gray distress look. And then I'm going to come back with a damp rig and we are going to wet distress it to just bring back more of like the grain of the wood, and you're going to, it almost like spreads it out and distresses it even more. After I finish that, I let it dry, and then we're going to come in with Big Top and we're going to completely seal the entire piece with Big Top. Like I mentioned earlier, if I don't seal it, it can be reactivated with water, and we're going to apply a paint inlay on here, and so I want it sealed completely because when we apply the paint inlay, we're going to use Big Top to apply that. This is Spring Melody, and it is the brand new IOD Paint Inlay. You guys, this is gorgeous. I absolutely love it. And look at all these beautiful sheets. You get 8 sheets of Paint Inlays, and I love how there's a couple full sheets and then some that you can cut apart. So anytime you're using a top coat to apply a paint inlay, like I said earlier, just apply one even coat of the top coat, mist your paint inlay to activate it, and then lay it in the paint inlay in that top coat. And just gently do that. I always try to take a damp rag and really embed that paint inlay in either the chalk paint that I'm using or the top coat. I also mist it to really ensure that it gets enough water on it so that it gets in there. And then the key with the top coat is it is time sensitive. So you're going to use your heat gun, you're going to dry it, and you'll know when it's dry because right now you can see it, but as the paint inlay dries, the paper becomes more like white. Once it gets to this point, you just need to remist it with your misting bottle. Make sure that the entire piece is wet, and then start peeling it back. For project 3, anytime I'm out thrifting and I see some really nice looking pictures that have good bones, I'm grabbing them. And I like these because I love the edges and they were very solid. They were actually brand new, and I probably could have sold them as is, honestly, but I wanted to do something completely different with them. So what I'm doing for starters is I'm going to paint the base of those white. Doing it for a couple reasons. We're wanting to hide the actual image, and then we're using decoupage paper, and we want to make that paper pop. Now this is called Paintable Florals by Roycycled from her recent release, and we're going to decoupage these down. I'm using liquid patina, doing a starter strip, misting, and many of you ask why mist? It expands the fibers in your paper and it helps alleviate a lot of wrinkles. And then I lay down my paper, I smooth it out, and I work my way down. I let these dry, and then I come back and I sand away the excess. I always want to do that in a downward motion. After I'm completely done with that, what I'm going to do is apply a really nice even thick coat of Big Top because we're going to apply a paint inlay. I'm also going to use the new gilded transfer called Petite Ornaments. And you guys, if you haven't used one of these gilded transfers, they're absolutely stunning and super easy to use. So what I do here first is I line up where I want to have my paint inlay. I'm going to apply a second coat of Big Top because my paint inlay is going to be embedded in that Big Top. I want a nice even layer. I'm going to mist my paint inlay, and then I'm going to put it in the actual wet Big Top. And I'm going to smooth it out, and it's going to embed in that Big Top. As I take my heat gun, I'm going to heat it up to completely dry it. Now, when you're using a top coat, like I've said earlier, this is very time sensitive. You don't want to leave this sit overnight, especially if you're applying it on a piece of decoupage paper like we're doing here. I damp away any excess excess water because you do want to remist that paint inlay when you're removing it, and then peel it back. And you guys, it's so gorgeous. I love it. Now it's time to apply the gilded transfer. And I do want to remove the center so that I know where I'm applying the transfer. So I take my X-Acto knife and I cut a slit, and then I take my scissors and I cut out the center. It's time to line it up and lay it down. If you haven't used these before, I have heard that many people apply them too rough or too hard. So what I recommend doing is just starting and with a very light hand or light pressure with that stick, with your transfer stick, just start rubbing and it comes off so easy. What I do recommend is I always pull it back. I look to see if any of the transfer has not been applied, and you lay it right back down, just like with the other transfers. And this just adds a little something to your piece of artwork. I hope you've enjoyed today's video, and if you haven't yet, go ahead, hit that subscribe button, turn on that bell notifications. That way, every Monday when I upload a video, you'll be notified. I have changed my upload schedule. It used to be Fridays, and now we're switching it to Mondays. So this is your official notice. Every Monday at 5 o'clock, I'll be uploading a video. Thanks, guys, and we will see you in the next one. Bye.